All right, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to the marketing research class. So please do me a favor and participate in the chat box area here. Just comment with any smiley face, any emoticon here. That will confirm that you can hear me very well, as well as that you can see the screen that I'm currently sharing so that we are on the same page. So thanks for that participation. You also need a textbook in front of you. We're gonna highlight some important aspects of the chapter. So today we are looking into chapter 13. So in the textbook, we are on page 275. But before we continue with chapter 13, yesterday I've sent you a learning activity 13, which contains some aspect of chapter 12. So you'll remember last week we covered chapter 12, and this was about preparation and processing of primary data, where we've got our data collected, captured on Excel spreadsheet there. So at some stage we spoke about these aspects, and one of them was coding, which is the process of categorizing data into numbers. This include pre-coding as well as post-coding. So basically what you have there, we talk about including the numbers in a questionnaire, as well as those numbers being transferred to data Excel spreadsheet. So in these learning activities, let's quickly look at that learning activity. Some part of the question of the assessment, how it can be asked. So this is the learning activity. You also can open it on your site, on your computer. It's the one that is on the email, the one with the class link there. So you've got question 3 on the first page. And this was saying, illustrate your understanding of coding of data by coding the following questionnaire. Indicate the code to be used next to the corresponding number of the questionnaire by writing it on your answer sheet. For example, in your answer sheet, so I'm quickly going to open Microsoft Word here so that you can follow how in your answer sheet you have to do it. So you will see they say you'll just have to indicate maybe 3.1 and you write the answer there. So if we go back to that questionnaire, you'll see it was asking here. Firstly, this was 3.1 questionnaire number. You have to code that. So what you see here as V1 to V3, that V stands for variable. So if you open a new Microsoft Excel spreadsheet, remember we'll have respondent here. And then those respondent will be respondent number 1 up until all the questionnaires were completed. So if you've got a sample of 500 people, it will go to 500 there. And then the first question, usually it's V1. So that's what this variable means. And then they will go all the way to the right side there. And what you see here with V1 is that is the first data that we have to code. So if you look in the questionnaire, it was asking the questionnaire number. So these are basically your answers that you're supposed to write. So the class learning activity show you the answers as well. So you don't have to do that learning activity separately. These are the answers. So it's some sort of a memorandum to this exercise. So the questionnaire number we usually code V1 to V3 for 3 reasons. So we will say 3.1 V1 to V3. This is because of the sample size, which is usually less than 1,000 people. So that could be 500 people. So V1 to V3 will be The first questionnaire will be 001, 0002, all the way up until 99 or 999. That's where you get the V1 to V3. So let's continue with 3.2 in your answer sheet. You will be coding it. 3.2 is asking gender. You will see here. And you've got two categories there, which is male and female. So the reason we categorize it V4, let me show you on the spreadsheet here. So remember this respondent, we said V1 to V3 is the questionnaire number. So it's the respondent number. The first one will be 0, 0, 1. Basically, it will continue from 001 all the way up until number 10. So let's fill the series here. So it will be something similar to this. The questionnaire number corresponds with the respondent. So because we use one digit, so you will see here it will be on the Excel spreadsheet itself. It will be something similar to that and then continuing all the way. So when you come to V4, now we ask the respondents the gender. And they can choose between two categories there. They can only choose whether they are male or female. And then those categories is number 1 for male, number 2 for female. So the reason we only have one variable is because it's a dichotomous question, meaning that they only have to choose one answer. They can't choose both here. You can't, as you can see, you belong to one specific gender. So if it was allowing them to choose more than one answer, you will see we were going to have V4 and have V5 there. But since it's going to be one, like this question here, where you see the next one, it gives respondents a chance to actually select all the applicable answers. So that's how basically this variable, you label them. So if you go back to the Excel spreadsheet, V4 was going to be if the first respondent was male, which when you look at the questionnaire, that will be 1. So second one, if it was female, it will continue like that if it was female, and so on. So basically in the assessment, what you need to do, you need to label your variables. So remember we said this one was a questionnaire number. (3.2), that will be only one variable, V4. And then you need to provide a label for, like I've indicated. So V4 stands for gender. So when you develop a code book, you can even go further and indicate the data numbers itself. For example, where you say male equals to 1. Female equals to 2. So you'll see the next variable, once you code the data, it's about marital status. That's going to be V5. You are going to add that. And once again, the reason because there is only one variable instead of having V5, V6 and continuing is because there's only one option that you can choose here. You can either be single, married, divorced, separated. We know in the practical world where we live in now, people are married and single at the same time. But when you collect data, can only be married or single. It's when you code your data according to as well as Home Affairs documents there. And when you look at the next variable, please rate the facilities of a campus out of 10. 10 being the best, 0 being the poor. So as a respondent, I will say library, I rated 10, put my answers there. but you can see it allows the respondent to actually rate all the categories. Hence, you're going to have each variable there. Because in the Excel spreadsheet, you cannot use only one row to put that data. So like I've indicated, this learning activity, it shows you the answers or the memorandum. So you just have to go through it. The next one, it's also similar. It shows you how you can show your variables. Every time when you have a questionnaire, we always use variable 1, 2, 3 for questionnaire number. And it also shows you why you've got a variable for each aspect here. And this is a different questionnaire as well. It also shows you the memorandum for your data labels. At some stage, maybe you can also see here, that's a mistake. It should be variable 12, not 127. You can also see here that with these variables that you have here, V8, V9, showing you that respondents, they can indicate more than one instrument, but when we categorize the label, you only put one label to it. It's called communication. You don't necessarily have to label each variable there. And then here you've got an example of a questionnaire that was used previously in one of our assessment, which was a research project. And this questionnaire is about digital banks, your timer bank that you know. There is also Bank Zero. You've got Discovery Bank. So digital banks, they don't have any branches, meaning that everything is online or on the app. So the questionnaire was used. It's also showing you how it was coded with those variables. So if this was your assessment, you won't have this aspect, and this is the aspect that you need to indicate in your assessment. For example, to say 3.1 is V4, 3.2 is V5, etc. there. And then as you go down through that learning activity, you'll see you've got learning activity 13 on page 8, the case study about healthy behavior, which is not something that is completely new to you. So with the healthy behavior, you'll remember this case study, we've done it previously. It was also part of your, I think, previous assessment. So today we're just going to focus on chapter 13 and try to answer this question and do an online quiz later on to do a reflection on this exercise. So now we can go to chapter 13. I hope that introduction to previous exercise or learning activity chapter 12, it will also help you with assessment when we ask you a questionnaire to code and so on. You just have to go through it, not necessary to develop or answer those questions there. And as you can see, while I'm sharing the screen, I'm going through separate documents, which means I'm not on the Microsoft Teams app, so I can't necessarily see your hand. So if you have any questions or comment, doesn't necessarily need to be a question, feel free to ask anytime or just unmute the mic and add on or anything there. So now we can go to chapter 13 on page 275. So chapter 13 is about data analysis and hypothesis testing. And you will see on the next page, basically, usually we used to have the diagram that is similar to that, but now in the new version or new edition of this textbook, they wrote it as bullets there. So on page 276, it shows you the data analysis circle. The first three, let's say this one, yeah, the first three steps we've already covered them in chapter 12, because that's whereby we have that Excel spreadsheet. And then remember, we spoke about data cleaning on chapter 12 to verify if the data was actually coming from respondents and so on. So this chapter, we're just going to focus on these last three steps, last 5 steps actually. The first step being to validate the research instrument. And in the textbook on page 276, you want to highlight that paragraph talking about at the bottom, the validation of the measurement instrument. After the data has been captured, read into statistical package, verified and cleaned, the construct in the measurement instrument or the questionnaire must be tested for reliability and validity. So when we validate the measurement instrument, we're going to focus on those two concepts, reliability and validity. And then once we have validated our research instrument, we can do some descriptive stats, do exploratory stats, analyze the data, and interpret the conclusions there. And interpret the conclusions, the last step, this one is chapter 15 actually, so chapter 13 is just the first 4 steps basically. And now I'm taking you back to statistics. So let's start with the validation of the research instrument. And then we use these two concepts, or we use these two measurements. The first one, remember, the aim is to validate the questionnaire. So in the textbook, maybe you want to write there with a pen or a pencil where it says validation of measurement instrument. You just write in brackets questionnaire, because when you refer to an instrument in marketing research, that's what we are referring to. That's the questionnaire that we have used asking questions, or the respondents. We just want to validate that questionnaire if it's reliable as well as it's valid. So reliability, it says here, it's consistency of a set of measurements of a measuring instrument. So once again, whenever we refer to measuring instrument, we're referring to a questionnaire. Let's talk a bit about the word consistency. When we talk about the word consistency, even if you quickly run something such as synonym here, because that will help you to understand what they are talking about when they talk about consistency. So let's look at for similar words. So you will see it takes you back to reliability there, stability, dependability. So consistency, it means that they ties in together those constructs. So once again, we are using jargon words here, so you have to try and follow. When they refer to consistency of a set of measurements. So let's now define measurements. First of all, we want to see if this set of measurements are consistent or not. So I'm going to show you an example of a questionnaire here. Let's use any, maybe Rooibos. So let's use the Rooibos questionnaire. And this was about skincare brands. The research was about skincare brands. So firstly, when we refer to question 1 in marketing research, question 1 will be considered a set of measurements. So it refers to this question, whether this question is related to this question. This question is related to that question. So are they consistent or not? And it goes further, whereby it also looks at these items. So when we ask respondents these items, for example, this question was saying, the following is a list of reasons why most consumers use facial skincare products. Please rate how important to you is each aspect based on the scale below. People use it for anti-aging benefits. Is that important to you? The respondents will rate that. To improve skin complexion, to prevent oily and shining skin, to protect skin. So all these items, we want to see if they are consistent, because once we have collected our data, we're going to have one mean that we are using, or one statistic variable to interpret that data. And when we interpret that data, if these things are not consistent, then we have a problem. It means our data is not reliable. So that's what they talk about in this meaning of set of measurements of a measuring instrument. So we use reliability. The measurement that is used there is called Cronfa alpha. I'm not going to go into details with this one. We're not going to basically give you a scenario whereby you have to interpret Cronfa alpha, but it's just for further understanding that we use Cronfa alpha. If it's when you run it on the statistics software, it will give you a number. So that number, if it's less than 60%, which is interpreted as 0.6, the questionnaire is not acceptable, which means the data that you collected is not reliable. You cannot use that data. You can imagine after doing that research for 3 months to find out that that data is not reliable. But obviously there is certain measurements you can take. You can simply recollect the data if you want to, or you can also interpret the data with some recommendations there and implications. It could also be a limitations. Remember when we develop a research proposal, we talk about research delimitations and say this research is limited to South Africa. So you can also add it there. This research is limited to an instrument that provided less than 0.6 Cronfa alpha, which is not recommended. We're not going to trust that data. It's not reliable. Let's talk about validity now. Remember, this is based on the questionnaire, but validity, it's saying degree to which constructs measures what it was designed to measure. So once again, some jargon words here, we need to break into detail here. So let's start with the construct. So what is a construct in marketing research or in a questionnaire? A construct, let's quickly go back here. A questionnaire such as this one, we refer to this as items one by one, but the whole questionnaire, questionnaire 4, it's a construct. So the construct that is we are measuring here is called reasons for using skincare product. So once again, we're going to have that construct which say it was measuring what are the important aspects of using the skincare product. So this construct, we ask ourselves, is it measuring what it's supposed to measure? So if we look at these questions, most of the time we're gonna ask you to validate where did you get these questions. So if you provide enough citation, enough references to say these constructs or these items were also used in previous questionnaires, were also used in previous studies measuring the same construct here. So these items were used, hence you use them. It also increased validity of your research. So when we talk about construct, we don't talk about questions such as this one. So multiple choice does not have constructs. So you'll see I skip multiple choice, I go to scales. Scale questionnaire, you'll remember on chapter 10, we discussed the type of questions. So scale questionnaire, that's the questions that have constructs. So because it's measuring one construct here, this is a purchase decision and is using those items. So going back to validity, the meaning of validity, it's asking whether that construct or that scale. So another term that you can use or want to add in a textbook on page 277, on top there where you have construct, paragraph, maybe you want to add with a pen or a pencil there, it's a scale questions to make it simpler there. So the degree to which that scale measures what it was designed to measure. At some stage, it's possible that you use the wrong construct, which means you are measuring wrong things. So let's make a practical example. Here, this question was asking about promotional activities that attract customers to purchase skincare products. And then you will see those promotional activities are things such as celebrities, beauty bloggers, family member, a friend, discounts. If you think about marketing in general, these are promotional activities that we know. So you are measuring the correct promotional activities. But if you use wrong questions here, for example, you will say you are looking at things such as the influence of external factors. Maybe you'll say things such as on the macro environment, for example, all those macro environment variables will be completely wrong. If you use economy, you use demographics, we don't consider that as promotional activities. So if we say the questionnaire is invalid, it simply means you ask the wrong questions in simple words. Meaning that the questionnaire that you used, it was not measuring what it was intended to measure. So it also needs some sort of another clarity. So let's bring in another practical example to understand the difference between reliability and validity in general. There is a nice video, 2-minute video, reliability and validity. So sometimes Microsoft Teams apps will not have a sound, so you'll confirm for me if you can hear the sound of the video. If you can't hear the sound, just let me know.
We can't hear anything, sir.
You can't see anything.
No, we can't hear. There's no sound. No sound.
Or there's no sound, but the video is moving.
Yep, it's moving.
Okay. So if we quickly do this. So basically in this video, what they are showing you is the basic marketing research process. You'll see it's similar to a research proposal. So they are using an example of Dr. Van Wyk, and they say he's a medical obesity specialist who work at the obesity treatment. So basically they are using this medical specialist who will look at their clients in terms of their weight, for example, fat consumption, and then based on different client needs or the data that he collects, he will use a scale. So usually this is a bathroom scale that we are familiar with. And then if the scale says this person is so many kg, he will recommend some type of medications or prescription. So you will see in the marketing research process, usually we start with a problem or research problem, then we go through data collection. You'll see it correspond with obesity there, and then we analyze the data. So now they explain validity and reliability. One day at 8 o'clock in the morning, he steps on the scale, and then he wanted to measure whether that scale is reliable or not. So he recorded the first results at 8 o'clock, and then he again at 8:30 in the morning, he stepped on the scale. So the scale said 96 kg at 8 o'clock, 8:30. It also said 96 kg there. At 9 o'clock, he went again on a scale, and then it says 96 kg. So what conclusion can we make here? Is this scale reliable or not? So because you can see it gives us consistent results. So that's why consistency comes in. So we can say the scale is reliable because it gives us the same results, 96 kg. But look what it says about validity. It says the scale is invalid. So that's another question we should ask ourselves. Why is the scale invalid? Remember, when you look at the definition of invalid or validity, it says it measures what it was supposed to measure. So when you quickly wanted to see if that scale, it was measuring weight, because the scale is supposed to measure weight when you step on it. So given that it gives this doctor 96 kg and he knows for a fact. So there was a study where he conducted his medical record. So he knows for a fact he's not herself is not 96 kg. Hence, he considered the scale to be invalid. So That 96 kg, it could mean something such as 200 kg if you want to understand validity better. So let's say the scale was saying 200 kg. So think about it to say, you know what, this scale is measuring something else because there is no way a person can be 200 kg or 500 kg. So that's what it means about reliability and validity, consistency of results and measuring what it's supposed to measure. And then on the next step, we discuss descriptive statistics. So once we have validated our scale that is reliable, we can start to interpret the data now. And you will see in the textbook, we go through on page 288 now, descriptive statistics. And with descriptive statistics, you've got the stats itself, as well as you've got the graphical representation that you need to do. So based on the Excel spreadsheet that you have to first calculate your frequency distribution. In a test or in an assessment, you get this in a form of a table, usually. And then you will see with absolute frequency. So if you open on the next page, they show you an example in the textbook there. That is on page 292, where they've done a frequency or distribution there using the income categories. Frequency showing you the number of people belonging to that category and the percentage out of 100%. And then you will see in the slide, you've got two escrow columns, cumulative as well as cumulative absolute as well as cumulative relative frequency. And usually there, what you wanna do, you wanna add the percentage from the previous category to the next category. There's a practical exercise or example that is shared on Brightspace on escrow activities. If you download that, as well as on the study guide itself. At the study guide, you will see some examples showing you the tables, how it differs with frequency distribution and those cumulative ones there. And then you can present your data in percentages as well, the stats. So usually this part is already covered with your frequency distribution because you've got percentages there, as you can see on page 292 in that table. The next step is to use measures of central tendency, which we refer to central location of the data as well there, instead of using the word central tendency. So you'll see they talk about the three measures of central tendency on page 288. You can highlight them there just before those bullets, which is the mean, the mood, and the median. And this part, I think, yebo.
Namhlanje, I don't know, but ungapa, and then you're there, and then you're like, you're confusing us, really. Let me speak for myself, I'm confused.
You must keep up today. We are on stats. We are back to statistics. You must try and keep up.
Slow kancane.
Okay. And I think I also saw another comment in the chat box about that. So yeah, today we are focusing on the most challenging chapter in this textbook. I must admit that the stats part, including the research part combined, yeah, you can imagine. But if you look at those measures of central tendency on page 288, you've got the mode there, the median, as well as the mean. And this is one of the questions we usually ask calculations on. So you'll see in that learning activity that we have, usually you will have a question such as that one. The following numbers represent body weights in kilograms of 11 students interviewed. And then they give you that data, and then they will ask you questions such as that one. Calculate the mean, the median, the mode of those numbers. So if you go back to the textbook and you look at basically the meaning of that, you can highlight the first one. The mode, it's saying it's the value that appears the most frequently in a series of data. And then the median is the middle value between the lowest and the highest value. What is important in that sentence, it also talks about the score that lies in the middle. The next sentence you also need to highlight regarding the median, because it tells you that the values are arranged from lowest to highest to determine the median. And there is that part, which is the last sentence, which you also need to also underline or highlight, because it comes often whereby you've got an equal number of respondents. If the sample consists of an equal number of respondents, the median is calculating by adding the two middle numbers and dividing the total by 2 there. And then you've got the mean, which it says the average. Basically, what you want to add with a pen or a pencil in that sentence, the arithmetic mean, you want to add the weights average. It's used most often when we refer to the mean is the sum of all values divided by the number of those values. So you should also know the discussion. Sometimes this is a theory question. You should also know the calculation. But we're gonna do one exercise on that to do the calculation. So let's finish with the theory part. And then you've got those graphical presentations. So in the textbook, you just wanna highlight, because you're gonna use this to interpret your data. There is a specific presentation corresponding with the type of data that you wanna use. So on page 292, we've got the bar chart there. You just want the first sentence there, talking that this chart is useful for presenting nominal or ordinal variables. And then you've got pie charts on page 297. You also have an illustration in the textbook showing you an example. Pie charts are used to show classes or groups of data in proportion to the whole data set. And we use them for nominal as well as ordinal data. And you've got an example whereby they used it for gender there, male and female. And then the last one that we are using to present our data is on page 294, which is line graphs. And the very first sentence, you want to highlight that at its simplest, the line graph is a diagram that shows a line joining several points. And we use it for continuous variables there. And you've got an example whereby they showed you a line graph of South Africa new car sales there. It's a timeline. That's another way that they use a lot in research. Maybe you want to add that with a pen or a pencil. We usually use this line graph when we want to present it, the data which shows various years. So in this case, they used 2006 to 2014. And basically, if you have your data, you will see you want to present that data in those different types of bar charts or pie charts. So if we quickly show our tool that we use, which is a Microsoft Excel. We cannot use, we can quickly calculate it on Excel. So if I use a different practical example here, continuing with Rooibos, remember Rooibos is about skincare brands. Let's say you have database now for Rooibos. And our database for rooibos, it will look something similar to this. We've already collected the data. You'll see those variables there. So with the rooibos data's, let's say we want a data set, we want to calculate the mean. So you've got the question on the database. It was asking the amount of money spent by respondents on facial skincare products. And then in the database, it's already directing us that it's on variable 35. So if we use these variables, our data set, that will be that money. So you'll see the first respondent said they spent 200 on facial skincare products, 400, 300, and so on. So we want to calculate the average for this. The nice thing about Excel, if you highlight that whole data set, you'll see you have one respondent there who did not complete. So during the data cleaning, that should have been taken out. But if you're using Microsoft Excel and you highlighted the whole series of data that you're talking about, it gives you stats already at the bottom there. So you've got that average there, which is 232. So we can interpret our data now using the mean to say our mean is, on average, respondents spend around 230 Rand on facial skincare brands there. You can also tell your Excel to calculate whatever you want here, your mood and so on. But if you want to, you can run a separate analysis. So for example, if we were to calculate something such as mood here, we will tell Excel to give us a mood. You can use this function there. And basically you want modes. And you've got that function. If you want a median, you can also ask for a median there. So let's take mode, for example. And if you look at that definition, it was saying is the number that appears frequently. So which one was appearing frequently? So when we highlight our range, our data set is this one. So you can see most of the respondents, or the number that came up a lot, it was 200. So they said they spent 200. And you can also look at the data itself if you want to. You can see there's 200 there, there's 200 there. So that's the number that appeared the most there. So if you're doing it manually, you can just have to look at your data set and see which number appears the most for mode. And then for median, if you're doing with Excel, you follow the same steps as those ones that we use for mode, the FX function there.
So what do
Yep.
we do if like in the numbers there's no number, like there's no mode, like there's no number that appears the most, all of them they only appear once?
Yeah, that's correct. Then you indicate that there is no mode. So if there is no number that appear more than once, so it means there is no mode actually. So you indicate
So
that
it has to be like here we have like 200 as the mode, right? But then
yes.
what happened? Okay, what if on the data we have like, okay, we have like maybe 215 rands and then something around 200 rands, but then
So
it's not the same figure.
then there is no mode, which means mode does not exist in that data set. As long as there is no number repeating itself, it means no mode exists. And
Okay.
yeah, and just to bring in, thank you for that question, because it happens a lot sometimes whereby you've got your data set and there's no number that comes in more than twice. So you will indicate the no mode. At some stage, you will get maybe the same number appearing on the same a number of figures, meaning that you've got 200 appearing 5 times, you also have got 250 appearing 5 times. So you also indicate there that you've got 2 modes, and then those modes is 200, the other one is 250. So it also goes the other way around. And when you look at about the graphical illustrations now, once again, with the graphical illustrations, you have to do this in an Excel format. So there's some sort of key points I want to share with you here when you use your Excel. In a formal sit-down test, we can hardly ask you for this, but in a practical online test, you can be required, or in a real project, to use Excel to present your data in terms of graphical illustrations there. So if you look at a question such as this one here, this one, it's about a different research study which is called alfresco pizza ovens. And just to give you an idea of those alfresco pizza ovens, there's a Facebook page that they have about this brand. So for example, here, let's quickly show you alfresco pizza ovens. And this is it's a project that we also have done previously for marketing research with our students at TUT, and they've collected this data. And then it was a small company at that stage, but now it has grown quite a bit because there were sales numbers showing them. So it's a homemade, some sort of an oven, and it's for a pizza. So we've conducted this research to find out whether the respondents are aware of those pizza ovens and so on. And we had the database. So if we open that database, let's say we wanted to draw a pie chart or some sort of, so you'll see this question is saying, draw a pie chart showing food dishes that are preferred by respondents when they go for leisure vacation and so on. So just to take you back to the real questionnaire that was used for that project. So let's find alfresco pizza ovens here. So this was a questionnaire that was used, and you will see it was asking the respondents about the dishes here. It said below is a list of food dishes that can be enjoyed when going for outdoor recreation activities. Please indicate your most preferred dish of food when going for leisure, and then people prefer dry meat, your roasted vegetables, baked dishes, and so on. So we wanted to find to present this data now, so that based on the results. So if we were to do that with this tool quickly on Excel, here it was guiding us that the answer is on variable 13. So we've got the database here. Okay, let's quickly open the alfresco pizza ovens. So this is a different database for alfresco, and okay, this is not the final one. Still not the final one. Yeah, this should be the final one. So this was our database that we've collected. So Variable 13, you can see it here. This was the question asking about special dishes, and you'll see respondent, the first respondent selected number 4. And if you look at that questionnaire, number 4 was pizza. So that respondent said he prefer pizza when he goes for leisure. And then the instruction says, first of all, we must calculate frequency of each dish. Use the Excel frequency function. If you want, you can sort your data from smallest to largest there. So going back to that final database here. What we want to do, you cannot highlight and draw a graph here because that's the common mistake that most people do. They will think that you can just quickly highlight that data set and grow the graph because it's going to consider that data as basically continuous variables, and that's when it becomes messed up. So the first thing you wanna, in your code book, you will have something similar to these variables. For example, your baked dishes was 1. You've got your dry meat, your pancakes, roasted veggies, and I think the last one was other. Then they can specify that as respondents. So in our database, we want frequency for all this. So we can use that function here. Remember, you can search for anything that you're looking for. In this case, we want count. So our range is this one, which is this question. And you can tell Excel what you are looking for. So in that, we are looking for 1. Remember, every respondent that selected 1 that was baked dishes, it's already telling you those are 7 respondents. And if you repeat the same function there, you will see you can quickly change it here and say you want 2 now, you want 3, or you want 4. So instead of going the long route, you can repeat the same function. So coming to the second one, you'll see I've copied everything. So now if I paste it and I say I am looking for 2, it does dot calculation. And the next one was 3. Next one is 4, which is the next dish there. And roasted veggies is number 5. And then you've got those respondents who selected other criteria. And this is an open-ended question, so you'll remember that we'll have to allocate new codes for that. And nice thing, it was just 1 respondent. That's the only time you can draw a graph once you have all this information or this frequencies. So the frequency distribution, it works as a first step for any graphical illustration. So once you have this, in this case, they said we can present it in a pie chart. So if we have that pie chart, we've got our graph using those frequency that we've calculated. So let's say the most important part here is to do that frequencies, otherwise your data won't show. And lastly, on Excel here, when you present your data set, you wanna make sure that your data is following all the guidelines that are indicated here on Excel. So firstly, if you come to design the chart title, you wanna title your data. Sometimes when you give this project and then students tend to give us a chart with name or titled chart title, which is unacceptable. So these were preferred dishes. For example, if you want, you can also tell the graph to show percentages there and so on. But I just wanted to illustrate for you the importance of calculating frequency distribution before you draw a pie chart. So that's why you see that being the first one. It's having percentages. It's showing you basically it's your first step. Every research should have that frequency distribution there. And then exploratory data analysis, we're not going to cover it. So we can skip through those pages. The last part is hypothesis testing. And if you go in the textbook, it's on page 300. And now in terms of hypothesis testing with marketing research, you don't have to go through all these steps. For your assessment, there is only one thing that is required for you is to know how to develop hypothesis and link basically your hypothesis with the type of graphical illustrations and that you're gonna use, whether you're gonna use the mean, you're gonna use the pie chart and so on. So we need to spend some time discussing hypothesis because that's another area the way I saw most of you are struggling with. So let's use the learning activity that I've sent yesterday about healthy behavior, which is not a new study talking about young adults moving out of their homes, whether they are aware of problems related to healthy behavior. So if you look at this paragraph, it was saying the Heart Foundation has proposed a research study to determine the influence of health campaigns found on social media towards healthy behavior. That's being our primary research objective. The proposed research study should also find out preferred social media sites among young adults, awareness, and so on. So if we take that and we quickly learn more about hypothesis, because I think that's another area where we need to visit and do a lot of reflection on. I'm happy with how you develop your primary research objective, secondary research objective, research questions. Most of you are excelling there. They know the guidelines, using the way to and so on. But with the hypothesis, it's another story. So let's take this and have our primary research objective here just to show you. Remember, it's a requirement that every objective must be numbered. This is one thing that is still not done. It must start with the weight 2. That could be to determine, to examine, and so on. So in this case, it was already given for us to determine the influence of health campaigns found on social media. And then you've got your secondary research objectives. And once again, they must be numbered or bulleted, and they must start with the weight 2 as well. So in this case, it was given to us to find out the preferred social media sites. Once again, you cannot have one sentence here. To measure, we have to look at the context as well. So you've got those research objectives, and then usually you change this into questions, but I want to go directly to hypothesis in this case. There are some requirements regarding hypothesis. They should start with the weight if then, because we're looking at the relationship between two variables. So the definition, it talks about a guess and an assumptions based on two variables. So at the back of our head, we should always think about these terms that they are referring here. Two variables, two constructs. In a questionnaire design, they're referring to two scales basically there. You must understand that hypotheses, they work on those two variables, one variable being an independent variable, another one being the dependent variable. Independent. In mathematics or in stats, they will say that's your X and it's always having an influence on your Y. So these variables they are talking about, they are already in your research objectives. So if you start with the first one, you've got to determine the influence of health campaigns. So you've got one variable there, it's health campaigns. What you need to understand is whether that variables, is it an independent variables or a dependent variables? So in this case, it's the independent because it's the one that is a cause towards behavior. So healthy behavior becomes our dependent variable. You go to the second objective. It's asking about to find out preferred social media sites among young adults. So a variable that will be testing is preferences. So once again, you ask yourself whether that is a dependent variable or an independent variable. For me to prefer Facebook, does that depend on something or it does not depend on anything? So it's a dependent variable. For example, it will depend on the content that I post or the content that I'm looking for. It will depend on data set. It will always depend on something. So we've got preference of social media sites there as a variable. And then you've got the next question. It says to measure consumer awareness. Is awareness depending on something, or for me to be aware, I don't depend on anything? So in this case, it's a dependent variable. For you to be aware of anything, you're gonna depend on technology, TV, media, education, and so on. So there's no way you can say you are aware of something just out of the blue. Let me give you another example of, okay, I'm gonna come back to that. So let me not go into detail. You said I should be a bit slow, guys, today. So last one, to determine consumer purchase intentions towards healthy food. So purchase intentions is willingness, whether I'm willing to purchase or I'm not willing to purchase something. So once again, you have to ask ourselves, is this an independent variable or dependent variable? So for you to have purchase intentions, that's a dependent variable. When, for example, the common or cliche practical example of purchase intentions is income. For you to be willing to buy a smartphone, iPhone, or nice car and so on, for you to have that purchase intentions, you need buying power. So it will depend on certain things as well. So once you've got these two variables, let's quickly add independent variables here. These are usually your demographics. For example, this could be your gender. It does not depend on anything. This could be, for example, something such as, actually every demographic you can add here. Ethnic group. Ethnic group. That's your culture, for example, and so on. So when you develop hypothesis, you want to show a relationship between two variables. It does not necessarily mean you want to show a relationship between this one and this one. Sometimes you want to show a relationship between this one and this one, any two variables. So the first variable that you can do once you have something similar to this, you can say if you can use any that you want here. Let's use gender, for example. If respondent is male, then you can use any of these variables that you have here. Let's take preference. Then the preferred social media is, I am not sure males whether they prefer Facebook or what, but if it was going to be more practical if we said female and we linked that with Instagram, then you've got that hypothesis. You can continue and use another hypothesis differently from both of them being dependent if you want. For example, let's take awareness and purchase intentions. For example, you'll say if sometimes you don't necessarily need to use the word respondent. If young adults, we know this study is about young adults. If university students, if young adult, and we're taking awareness, are aware of problems as a result of obesity, then we can link it with anything that we want here. We can link it with purchase intentions. Then they are willing to purchase healthy food. Please spend some time with different case studies. Spend some time looking at the hypothesis. Go back to your semester test online. Look at the mark that you got for hypothesis. If you got fewer marks, try and redevelop them again after this exercise because it's going to really help you. So with the data analysis, what you want to do, you want to indicate basically the method that you're going to use for this each and every hypothesis. So in this case, we're seeing gender, for example, and we want to associate that gender with social media preference. So we want to see whether we can draw some sort of a pie chart. So if you feel like you can use a bar chart for this, that's the only thing that you need to do regarding hypothesis. So I'm going to illustrate this hypothesis using a bar chart. So we use descriptive in this case for marketing research. For example, in this case, it was asking about awareness and willingness to purchase healthy food. So if you feel like bar chart as well here, maybe showing bars of awareness, for example, not at all aware, extremely aware, showing those bar chart, you can illustrate that in bar chart. So you want to link the hypothesis with a descriptive statistics that you have to use here. So sometimes you can use those mean medians as well to say this hypothesis, I'm going to use the median to interpret it and so on. So you not necessarily need to go through that comparing statistic value with critical value. So that we assume you have that total knowledge on stats. And that brings us to the end of chapter 13. So it will be important for us to do some reflection or some reflective exercise. So let's quickly play a quizzes game so that I can see if you understood some of the learning content of today. So you are familiar with quizzes game now, and we're gonna use that quizzes game based on this case study. So it's the one that I've sent yesterday. So you may want to spend maybe 1 or 2 minutes quickly reading that case study if you haven't done so far. And you may want to spend some 2 or 3 minutes answering that question and doing the mean, calculating the median as well as the mode before I start the game, because on the game you'll just have to answer those questions. So let's quickly spend some time, let's say 3 minutes, doing those calculations before you go to the game. So let's use this. I'm going to call it learning activity 13 because we already have that. And you have to answer question 1, which is in the last page. Okay, let's generate a game code so long. So once you have done answering those questions, you can follow the instructions of joining the game, including the game code, and start the game. So it's only 6 questions, but I've allocated about 2 or 3 minutes where you have to answer about the mean. So you can also spend that time on while you have logged in on the game code. And let's say we'll discuss feedback quickly at 5 to 4. So please don't mind the silent. You can ask any questions if you have, but I'm just gonna mute myself this side so that you can concentrate in answering those questions there. So our game code is 944622. And I'm gonna quickly paste it in the chat box there. And as you answer those questions, just have a glance at the screen showing you the leaderboard.
Say, can I please see those those numbers, the mean and the mode, the numbers that we must calculate?
Okay, the numbers on the question on the learning activity, ne? These ones.
Thank you.
All right. All right, let's quickly discuss feedback for that game. Look at the questions that give you some hard time and see if we need some clarity on those questions. So unfortunately, I'm going to end the game so that it can generate the feedback for us. Firstly, congratulations, Love. Usually there's so many songs that have been released about Mujolo, Munata, all this KZN version, but this Love is winning here. Ashikanami says Mujolo. So Love, would you love to like to unmute the mic there and have a speech? A thank you to your parents, your mom and dad, or anything?
Yes, I would like to thank my boyfriend and my side boyfriend for supporting me.
Yeah, now I understand why the nickname. All right, congratulations. Let's look at the questions there, the one that with the red flags. So it's question 1 and question 6, yeah? So if we look at question 1, you will see it was asking here validity. It was a true or false question. Validity refers to consistency of a set of measurement of a measuring instrument. That was false. This is reliability. So when you talk about consistency, every time think about reliability. And then there's another red flag was question 6. And if you look at question 6 was basically asking another true or false question. So with the calculations, you did very well. Most of you, it was just here another false answer. This is validity definition where it says reliability refers to the degree to which a construct measures what it was designed to measure. That is validity, where we look at whether the questions are measuring exactly what they're supposed to measure or they are measuring something else. Maybe that example about Dr. Van Wyk will ring a bell there that although the scale is consistent, it's not measuring body fat and so on. So that is validity. So in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, at the moment we are struggling to access ITS. So the marks that are on Brightspace, they've been finalized. It's just that they need to go to ITS, but I'm struggling to enter them on Brightspace on ITS there. So in conclusion, I think I can say good luck for the next assessment and. Please chat box here, sign the register by indicating your mood. Use any smiley face, any emoticon face there, whereby you indicate your mood, happy face, if you are happy, sad face, angry face, or anything. I will stop the recording now so that we can upload that. So overall, have a lovely day. Goodbye.